The greatest underserved community is still the 40-year-old that's in wealth building mode. And that could be 40. I would say that that 40 to 45-year-old today, because so much of the financial advisory community is still focused on the retiree or that person in that retirement red zone that is maybe within a couple years up to 5 years of retirement. I think the massive, massive opportunity is getting people sooner rather than later in the process. And part of that is I'm 42 and I enjoy working with other people who are, plus or minus 5 years of me. Oftentimes we're going through the same exact things, right? I have 3 kids. I'm running a business. I'm trying to figure out how to balance life insurance, disability insurance, planning for my kids' future, as well as saving some money for my future. So we're going through the same things. I think that leads to more authentic conversations, and I think it's hugely underserved because for the typical AUM advisor, they want the $2 million client today. I want to work with that younger family, 40-ish, over the next 2 decades, and then live their best possible version of that next chapter that's going to be 3 decades plus of doing all of the bucket list stuff, not only in the future, but today. Can I share a quick math example with you? I think you're going to enjoy this, and I think it'll blow your mind. It's the difference between a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old. So, if you will, picture um, your 50-year-old self with $1 million, and you've gone through some sort of detailed financial planning process that you know that with confidence you need $4 million to retire. So you're at 1 million, you want to get to 4 million, you have 10 years to get there. At a 7.8% rate of return, you're going to need to save and invest $131,000 a year. Now, if you're making 400,000, like many of the people that we're working with do, that's a 33% savings rate pre-tax. So, roughly a third of that money is going to go to taxes or more, maybe 40%. But so many people cram in that last 10 to 15 years in retirement, right? People generally start getting the message that retirement is serious at either age 50 or when the last child gets out of college. I'm telling you, in 20 years of doing this, I see so many 50 in that window, people in their 50s. Once that last child is through college, all that money that maybe they were cash flowing for college now gets funneled in to retirement. So it's like maxing out the 401k, maxing out the catch up. Now we're doing additional savings to try to get to the number that we need to get. And so maybe it's possible to get there, but I seriously question whether you're living your best possible life, right? You're adding a lot of additional stress to the plate. You're 50 to 60, right? These are times when you're probably at that point of your life when you should be taking extra vacations, spending more time with adult children. I find when people can afford it, the best time to spend time with your kids is like as they've entered adulthood, that 22 to 25 range. Hey, maybe mom and dad weren't so bad after all. Maybe they had a little bit more horse sense than we thought coming into themselves a little bit. That's a really fun parent child interaction zone. But you've certainly limited your possibilities if you're so far behind the 8 ball that you have to supercharge to either get to a point where you can retire or you have to stretch out how far that you have to work in potentially a job that you don't love. Right. There's no guarantees, right? I mean, we know the reason that we use 7.8% for planning purposes is that is the historical worst 30-year annualized return of the S&P 500. But during a 10-year window, there have been periods of time that have been certainly much worse than 10%, right? So just because of sequence of returns, we might have to work longer, save more anyways. But if we can stretch that period out from 50 to 60 to 40 to 60, now we have a 20-year window. The probability of getting a 7.8% rate of return or higher gradually increases. Now, here's the number that's going to blow your mind. If you started at 40, not with a million, like my 50-year-old example, but you start with $472,000. And just so you know how I got there, if you have $472,000 and it grows at 7.8% over the next 10 years, it's going to magically turn into a million. So the 40-year-old with 472 is essentially equivalent to the 50-year-old with a million. We're talking the same dollars. All right. So what does the 40-year-old have to do to get to $4 million? Dollars? It is $42,000 a year. Let's say that they're making $300,000 at 30, or excuse me, at 40, not making the 400. So if we're saving 42 on 300, it's about a 13% savings rate. That's doable. I mean, it may not be easy. This is a hard stage of life, but it's doable. So to quickly reframe that, 42 a year versus needing to do 131 a year. That's an $89,000 delta. When both of those people arrive at 62, who do you think has a little less stress? Who do you think gets to create a few more memories with their children? Who do you think has the flexibility to maybe live and give generously? Like, financial planning is not about outperforming the stock market. I think good financial planning, what we're discussing here, is about saving the least amount of money over a long period of time to reach the goal that you want to get to and do more of those bucket list items along the way. You don't have to wait to 60 and 65. I mean, I think the average 40-year-old people like us, we're trying to balance having a great life today with also a, a great life in the future, right? We don't want to scrimp and save and eat ramen for the next 20 years, even though my kids love ramen like it's the greatest thing on earth. We don't want to just save and save and save in an account we can't access for until we're 60, because who knows what our health is even going to look like at 60. I mean, tomorrow is not given. I hear people talk about budgeting, and I will say that, listening to people talk about budgeting even gives me some level of anxiety. I'm a big believer in the reverse budget. Let's talk about what are the most important priorities. Let's earmark dollars to those at a realistic rate of return where we think we can get to where we want to go by the timeline that we have set out. And let's give ourselves guilt-free spending authority over that money. So if we have 10,000 coming in every month and we need to set aside 4,000 to do all the things that we say that are important to us and our family, that leaves a delta of 6,000. And I don't care where that $6,000 goes. Let's go to the Disney Polynesian and have an amazing experience. Let's, go to Hawaii. Let's eat out a couple times every week. Like whatever it is for you, enjoy it. That should be guilt-free, stress-free expenditure of money, because you know that you have already prioritized and set aside dollars for your future family. For shame, guilt, like all of those feelings that come, there's a lot of issues that come from money related stress within a family. And I think a lot of it just stems from the fact that they're not acting upon a financial plan. They don't really know how much they need to be saving and investing. And, for all intents and purposes, they're winging it. And when you wing it, there's going to be some adverse consequences for lack of planning. You would say, is great as the enemy of good, or something like that, right? The process of starting is, much more important than the process of trying to pick the most optimal outcome. But, retirement can't be financed. And so I really think it's extraordinarily important. And I think it's selfless, um, not selfish, to invest for your own retirement first. Because if you truly care about, your children's future, one of the great things you can do is to ensure that you're not a financial burden on your children. And that's a hard message for young families to hear, that, we need you to set money for your retirement away first until you get that to a good place before we start saving for your children's education. The children's education is really should really be thought of as a bonus. The life events are always crucial, right? I mean, we've we've brought on at least 5 clients that I can think of off the top of my head this year who inherited money. And inheriting $100,000 is much different emotionally than receiving a bonus at your job of $100,000. It's the same amount of money, but emotionally and what you want to do with that money is completely different. And I think the inheritances have made people raise their hand and they say, hey, Nick, I can't figure it out. I don't know what to do with this money. I'm not sure where it fits into my picture. I'm trying to think about what's best for me versus thinking about what would mom and dad have wanted me to do with this money. So it's overlaying, the 40-year-old who has a couple of kids, who has that complexity of life already with balancing all the things, and then they receive an inheritance on top of it, and there's just a heavy emotional toll, and they're just trying to figure out what to do, and they don't really know how to think about it in context of an overall plan. That has gotten people off the sideline. I can't tell you 100% why. My guess, this is just purely a guess, my guess is that the emotional weight of receiving that money has been too heavy that they know that they can't make a decision, and that's been enough to push them over the edge and say, "Hey, I got to have some help." But the 40-year-olds that we're talking about, right? The ideal client that's underserved, guess who's inheriting the money? Now, we also talked about the our parents' generation who might live to be 120 because of all the medical advancements and the incredible improvement in hip surgeries and knee replacement surgeries and stuff like that. But this does come full circle that the people that we're talking about who are the most underserved are the ones who will, inherit these dollars and are going to have to make those emotionally charged decisions about what do I do with the inheritance? How do I think about how to make decisions with the inheritance as it incorporates my own plan? Yeah, divorcees, that's another one that brings people, almost predominantly women. Hey, I wasn't really involved in this whole financial stuff as I probably needed to have been. I'm trying to figure it out. I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn or Instagram. Can you help me out? Can you give me some guidance? But I think it's like pain point, divorce, inheritance, job change, Robinhood account blew up, right? It's those pain points that funnel people into the inner circle of I need a plan, right? I mean, it all centers on the fact that I've been hammering. You need a plan. You need a plan. You're winging it without a plan. You're leaving money on the table. You're leaving vacations and life experiences and eating out. All of those great things that you want to do in your bucket list, all going to happen quicker, sooner, more affordably within the construct of a plan. So it's all of those pain points generally that make people, raise their hand. Yeah, I think it's this. I think the message is simplicity, right? Keeping people on that one-page plan. People love that. The fact that we went from this world of 100-page plans to one-page plans, and I get, um, messages about, hey, we printed off the one-page plan, we taped it to the refrigerator, or whatever. We put it on the whiteboard. The difference is if we can successfully help people or not. How we'll ultimately measure success, and this is how every financial planner should view it, is were we able to keep clients invested during the worst of times? And did we help people achieve their goals? If we capitulate and we let people go to cash at the worst possible moments when the market's down 30, 40, 50%, we failed people. That's the bottom line. And so we have to proactively give all of the clients we serve that message of vitamin C that the plan is always working, even when the market is failing. And whether the market's down 15% or 50%, we have planned for that. And the only way to get the full return of the market is to stay invested through the good times and the bad times, because human history is a failed investor. There's no way to successfully go in and extract your capital at the top, wait for the market to crater, and then successfully redeploy those dollars at the bottom. Human history would suggest it cannot be consistently done. And so whether we help people or not ultimately depends on when the market goes down 30 to 50%, whether we can keep them in and hopefully encourage them to continue to invest through the most trying times. Everything can work within the context of a plan. I think that's a message that more people need to hear.